There is just a little bit of housekeeping we're going to need to do because I had some interesting things going on out there at the doorway. I wanted to make sure that you have picked up a tool for today. Actually, two of them. So, do you have your wooden blocks? Everybody got some wooden blocks? All right, there you go. We're going to use those today in the service. It's going to be an interesting service, I think, at least. It'll be explained here in just a second, but I am excited for this coming week. We have some things happening that I think are going to be pretty awesome. Certainly, our breakfast coming up, and I'm so grateful for the Sarahs and Robin. I guess I can give you three ladies the first credit and continued blessing of so many volunteers that help us make that breakfast possible. So join us on Saturday for the breakfast. We'll look forward to that. Next Sunday, of course, we also have Teen Challenge coming. Pastor Tyler's going to be preaching, and then afterward, we're going to have the potluck. I did want to say this. I won't say the person's name for confidentiality, but we do have someone we know that's at the men's campus. So they will be here probably in group. And so we might see someone who's been a part of this church for a little bit that has actually checked himself into the program. I praise the Lord for it. I think every student that goes to Teen Challenge is a hero for choosing Jesus rather than the struggles of addiction. So I'm grateful for it, but just wanted to let you know, if you see someone that you might recognize, he's by his own effort gone into Teen Challenge and is there getting the help that he needs, and we're grateful for the Lord and for Teen Challenge for that. So just to let you know, you might see that person. We are going to go ahead, and is it time to dismiss the kids for Kids Church? Head on out, kids. Praise the Lord. So grateful to have our Kids Church teams ready to go. All right. Very good. So as you know, we are studying this book of Esther. And the book of Esther is truly, it's a story in the Old Testament of a true time in history, a true story, a story that is recognized by not only Jewish tradition and culture, but also just historians. And so we'll make some reference to that. The title of this series is Esther, Reluctant Hero Queen. And this week's sermon is titled, Wish Granted, Request Fulfilled. And you'll see why. I normally pull some hints out of the text and use it as some of the title so that you can see. And I think it's just really interesting the way this phrase has been repeated. It was actually earlier, in earlier chapter, but it'll be repeated again in this chapter, this phrase. Last week, what we learned was that you need to be prepared, put your best foot forward, and bless before you ask. We also saw that you need to keep your emotions in check, and that was when Esther had actually finally been able to go before the king and make her presentation known. So this story of Esther, it actually is recognized by the Jewish culture because they actually started an annual celebration called Purim. And Purim is celebrated in the beginning of the year. It's the 14th of Adar. That's a month. It's in our months that we normally go by would be the month of March, roughly, so sometime early March through the month of March. As you know, like the Jewish calendar moves around a little bit. That's why even celebrating Easter and some of the holidays seems to be like, why does it always move around? It's following a different ancient calendar. And so they celebrate it on the 14th day of the month of Adar. And we'll know more about it in chapter 8, which will be in 2 weeks. But what they would do is they will annually get together, and what they will have is a gathering to celebrate what we're reading, this story. They'll read this story, and what they do is when they're doing the reading part of this celebration is they will bring noisemakers to the reading of the event so that they can do basically what maybe you and I have experienced at some fun gatherings, a melodrama. So they'll read the story, and when the evil villain of the story, his name is read, they will make noises. So get your sound makers. So we know the evil villain in our story is Haman. Boo! So you got to say boo. The reason they would do that is to try and even almost drown out his name. So they would do that. It's a melodrama. Some of you might recognize, I looked it up, like what's the story in the history of melodramas? Because I kind of remember going to a theme park and you sit in this setting where there's a story being told and there's the dastardly villain with his curly black mustache and black top hat, and he's sometimes got a cape and he's really evil, and then there's the poor helpless young lady and he ties her up on a train tracks. Do you remember the story, right? It's not real, obviously, but well, actually, in 1867, there was a story written called Under the Gaslight, and it was a good versus evil melodrama, really similar. If you think about it, in the 1860s, dramas and public settings were actually common. They didn't have movies. They didn't have all of that going on. So they would have acting and ways of carrying out the story, telling the story. In the 1900s, there was also, I don't know who even wrote it. It didn't say as I kind of study this, but there's a repeated story called The Saga of Roaring Gulch. And it is that story of the bad villain who takes a helpless lady and ties her down on the railroad tracks. And so the group, the audience, is encouraged to participate. When his name is said or when he shows up on scene, everyone makes noise and yells, boo. So we're doing the same thing this morning. You might wonder why. Well, it's to keep you awake. No, I thought it would be kind of fun. It occurred to me as I studied and understood what they actually do at the Feast of Purim. I wanted to reenact some of that this morning because this 2 chapters, we're going to go through chapters 6 and 7. These 2 chapters are truly the pinnacle, the very highest point of the story with a conclusion of that part of the story. Now, as we went through understanding biblical storytelling, stories will normally have that, and then there's kind of the fallout and aftermath, what happens after that. But this week, these 2 chapters are that pinnacle, the climax of the story, and then the fallout following. So, what we're going to do is we have our wooden blocks, and when the villain's name is said, Haman, we're going to boo. Now, we have 2, actually, heroes, and it is both Mordecai and Esther. So what I want you to do with Mordecai and Esther, you don't have to have these in your hand if you don't want to, but I want you to just say, yay, or clap and say yay, but you don't need to clap these because they're a little bit obnoxious. So when we say the name of Haman, it's boo. And when we say the name Mordecai and Esther, it's going to be yay. You got it? All right. And we're only going to do that when I'm reading the text, because then I'll make references to, and I don't need you, we don't need you to be a distraction, right? Okay. All right, so this is going to be kind of fun, kind of different. We do have a slide from last week that I wanted to remind us to set the scene. Last week we saw that Queen Esther had initiated her plan by inviting the king and another guy, don't do it, but Haman, to this banquet. She entices the king and Haman to join her, and at that banquet, the king can tell, this isn't just about dinner. It's not the kind of relationship that they had in this time period where she's at home cooking dinner and she's, hey guys, it's time for dinner. It's not like that. She didn't normally have a chance to be with the king. And when she went to him, she says, I prepared a special meal, a special banquet, and I want the 2 of you to come to the meal. So she invites them, and when they get there, the king goes, okay, something's up. Why did you plan this banquet? And she says, well, if you would answer my wish, my request, I'd like for you to come to another banquet tomorrow. She sets them up. Remember last week? She says, I'd like you to come to another, both of you, to another banquet tomorrow. And at that banquet, or at that meal, then I'll reveal what it is that I request. So she kind of sets them up for that. And we saw that our villain, and we're not going to clap right this time because it's not the scripture part, but we saw that Haman was so excited by it, but as he left the palace area, he saw his arch nemesis, which is our hero, Mordecai, at the king's gate. And he didn't bow to him. He didn't give him all this weird, praise, and he hated this guy. So he went home, and he was so upset. His wife and best friends said, you know what you need to do? You need to build a gallows. And it was 75 feet high, and he built it outside of his own place to hang our hero, one of the heroes, Mordecai, on. That's how we ended last week. And so this sets the tone of kind of what we're coming into. Just remember that, we'll see it, but there's a question that we had, and it's the idea that is there ever a time you're kind of wondering, is God at work, even when you don't see that he's doing things? You're going to see in this beginning of this chapter and on through that certainly God is at work. So Esther chapter 6, verses 1 and 2. All right. On that night, the king could not sleep, and he gave orders to bring the book of memorable deeds, the Chronicles, and they were read before the king. And it was found written how Mordecai, yay, had told about Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs who guarded the threshold and who had sought to lay hands on King Ahasuerus. So if we remember the story, what we've got going on is he can't sleep. The king has insomnia. Wow, that's strange, but it's part of our story. So because he can't sleep, he says, hey, why don't you bring out, I love just the name of this, bring out the book of memorable deeds. So I asked if maybe we could have something that looks like it. There we go. There it is. There's the book of memorable deeds. It's got the title on there. It looks really old and ancient. And so thank you for getting that graphic up. So it bring out the book of memorable deeds. And it's just a history. They said it likely recorded either significant events or literally daily events. But this would have been back in the past. So I'm believing that it was more significant things that were recorded there. And as they're going through, this story comes back out about how, and if you remember back in the story, that Mordecai had heard about these guys that were guards, and they were basically threatening to attack the king. So he let the king know, and those guys are dead. So, but nothing happened, right? So we're going to see. That's the story about this. But remember, it reveals how his warning had saved the king. The question in your email was specifically this: what proof do you have that God is working behind the scenes in your life? Because sometimes we're even looking for that. I don't even see God moving. I don't know God's doing anything. But when maybe it's not happening to you and you're one of the characters, it might be happening for others that will affect your life. Like this, how the king, most powerful person in that whole area, the whole empire, could not sleep. And because he can't sleep, he says, bring out the book. They bring out the book, and he's reading through and remembers this person, one of our characters, had done an incredible deed for him. It just happens to be on the night between the two feasts. By coincidence, right? Of course not. God had a plan. And it really creates some incredible drama and power. And think about this. Are there times when you feel like maybe God has kept you up or woke you up for some reason? It was kind of out of the ordinary. And you're just sitting there going, I don't even know why I'm wide awake at 3 a.m. I would encourage you, maybe you don't have a book of incredible deeds, but actually you do. Just crack open your Bible, honestly. Not because it's boring and you'll fall back asleep. Because maybe God's trying to point you to something. And I'm not kidding. There have been times that I have just said, God, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. And the scripture he led me to was exactly what I needed. Amen? Anybody ever had that happen? You can say, yeah, that's happened to me. So let's not get caught up in the circumstances. Some of them may be major. Like I explained, family and friends that are either out of their homes right now in Spokane or their home's been destroyed. I don't even know some of the detail of where actually it's gone through. But we know that people are really displaced. And maybe you're going through something in your life. It feels like a wildfire. It feels like something massive and powerful, and you don't know what to do. Know that God does work, and he's at work. We just might not quite see it yet. And that's what he's doing here. And I love the detail we have in the story because it reminds us of that. It's not coincidence. It's not happenstance that the king can't sleep and then asks for the books. The books reveal this reminder about something that happened in the past. And maybe sometimes God wants to do that. He wants to remind us of things he's done in our past in the middle of the night when we can't sleep. So verse 3, it says this. The king is thinking about this story in this book. He says, well, what honor or distinction has been bestowed on Mordecai? Yay! The king's young men who attended him said, nothing's been done for him. So now he hears this story, and he kind of has an empire to run, so he probably didn't realize we didn't do anything. I mean, we didn't do anything for this guy? This guy saved his life. This guy spared him, and nothing had been done. You ever done something good, and it wasn't recognized? You just, you did a really good thing. You're like, man, I opened the door for my wife. I can't even believe it. I didn't get a thank you. I didn't get a, you're such an amazing husband. I mean, man, I can't believe that. When you do a good deed, you do the right thing, just wait, just trust. God will take care of you, and, perhaps maybe it'll down the road come back and bless you. But we know that really, our character Mordecai didn't do anything about it other than he had let them know, and now we're further down in time. So the king is discovering this. In verses 4 and 5, it helps set us up some interesting things. You're going to want to get ready with these little guys. All right. And the king said, who's in the court? So this is literally all happening. The time sequence is really short, really tight. He's hearing about this story. He goes, you mean we haven't done anything for him? And then all of a sudden he hears something outside of where he is in the king's court. And he says, who's out there? Now, Haman, boo. He had just entered the outer court of the king's palace to speak to the king about having Mordecai, yay, hanged on the gallows that he had prepared for him. And the king's young men told him, Haman, boo. Haman is there standing in the court, and the king says, let him come in. Now, remember, no one can approach the king without being welcomed in. So Haman shows up. He's got an agenda, right? And he shows up. He's got this idea. But what we already see happening is, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be, I love it. It's really powerful how this is laid out. The drama is building in the story. And as Haman arrives, he's going to be asking permission to hang Mordecai. He's entering in. You ever gone to a meeting with a really specific agenda? I mean, you are just, boy, you know what it is you want to talk about. You've got a whole mindset of what you're going to say. You've even kind of built up the strength and the energy to present something to someone that's maybe a boss or something like that. You go in, you're all worked up, you're ready to go. That's Haman. He's ready to go. He's going before the king. He's got this plan. He's already presented other things that the king thought was such a great idea. So he's like, hey, I've got the king's ear, so I'm going to bring this to him. He's kind of, carrying after this first banquet, and he was excited. He's got the gallows back home ready to go. Now he's going to go do this. Later gets a meal. I mean, it's going to be awesome. So he's bold. And verse 6 says this. Hold on, I better grab these. So Haman, boo, he came in, and the king said to him, and this is great, this is so awesome. The king asks him a general question. What should be done to the man whom the king delights to honor? It's a good question. What should happen to that man? And this so reveals Haman and his personality. And Haman, boo, says to himself, whom would the king delight to honor more than me? He's like, yeah, man, I am in so good with this guy. The king loves me. He's even asking me, what would I want him to do? Now, what's really great about this story, I mean, he is the perfect villain. He immediately thinks of himself. We've already known that he's pretty full of himself. Now, this just even reveals even more how full of himself he is. His pride, his assumption, this has got to be about me. How does this pride-filled, jealous, enraged man answer? Look at what he does, verses 7 through 9. So his answer, his idea is this. And Haman, boo, he says to the king, for the man whom the king delights to honor, let royal robes be brought, which the king has worn, and the horse that the king has ridden, and on whose head It's the horse, by the way, on whose head that has a royal crown been set. And let the robes and the horse be handed over to one of the king's most noble officials. Let them dress the man whom the king delights to honor, and let them lead him on the horse through the square of the city, proclaiming before him, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delights to honor. It's like he had this memorized. It's like he already knew, if I ever got the chance to be honored, this is exactly how I want it to look. Look at the list. He even gives them a list, okay? Here's the list. Royal robes. Not just good, pretty-looking robes, but the actual robes the king has already worn. Now, I don't know if you know about sports memorabilia, right? Sports memorabilia would be kind of anything like either clothes worn or items used by a sports figure. If you know that item had been used in a game or a playoff game or something, it has even greater and greater value because they wore it or they used it. Golf clubs, baseball bat, whatever it is. Jennifer and I yesterday had a chance to go to the mother of all garage sales in Everett. And we were invited by Pastor David and Carla Risto, and they had told us about it. So we went. I even texted him, hey, Pastor David, we're here on the corner of Grand and like 18th. And he goes, we're on the corner of 12th and something or other. So we met up and got to do a little garage sale and shopping with him yesterday. It was kind of fun. And he goes, what did you get? And I had a couple of golf clubs I found, a couple of old Ping Answer putters, brass putters made by the Karsten Manufacturing, by the way. Got them for cheap. But along with them was a J. Buhner stamped bat with J. Buhner's signature on it. Pretty cool. I'm like, that means something. This isn't the bat you get if you're the first 300 people there. This is the bat that J. Buhner signed that says J. Buhner on it, stamped on the bat, and then his name signed on it. I'm like, all right. See, it has more value because he signed it. So this guy thinks, not only am I going to wear some really cool-looking outfit, I want the one the king has worn because that makes it more valuable. That makes me look almost like him, which is, I think, what he was kind of doing. He wanted to be like the king. Not only that, bring me the horse, not just any horse, the horse that the king has ridden. So this is also, people would recognize, oh, that's the horse the king rides. And he's like, I want to be the one on it. So I want that horse. Not only, but they would also adorn the horse. They would create a special kind of a thing that would be put on the horse's head that would signify that horse is a special horse. He wants that horse with the thing on the head, and he wants that all of that to be put together. And then for some incredible noble person to lead him around the city square so everyone can see, not just see, but hear. Thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delights to honor. I mean, he is swelling up with this amazing feeling of, I'm going to look so good. This is going to just make this the best day ever. Because I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to go to a meal, and at some point we're going to hang Mordecai. I mean, he's got it all played out in his mind. And his mind is sick. You know how it can be with a person who's so full of pride. All that he's thinking about is himself. You know, I looked up the term irony. Irony is defined, or one of the definitions talks about how it's a storytelling tool that basically it's where the audience knows important information, but the character doesn't know. So you're either seeing something and then a character comes in and doesn't know. What we are hearing and seeing and understanding is there's already building irony in that we know that the king couldn't sleep and he heard about a story. We know the king was excited to hear about a guy that saved his life. He asks a general question and the character assumes it's him. But that's where the irony starts coming in. And so anyway, it adds tension, it adds suspense, it increases actually adds humor to it. So verse 10, we get to see what the king says. Got to grab our blocks. Then the king said to Haman, boo, hurry, take the robes and the horse as you have said, and do so to Mordecai the Jew, yay, who sits at the king's gate. Leave out nothing that you've mentioned. This is hilarious. Can you imagine? I mean, we describe it in many ways. Like his eyes must have popped open. His jaw hit the floor, like dropped like. I mean, how many things would have had to been going through his mind? First of all, did you say Mordecai the Jew? The guy I was coming to, you want to honor not me? You want to honor him? Oh, it's got to be starting to suddenly. Have you ever had one of those moments where it just all of a sudden starts hitting you, oh no. Oh no. It just keeps getting worse. Mordecai the what? The Jew. He's the guy, he knows he's the guy responsible for making the law become law that's going to kill the Jews in a number of months. And now Mordecai the Jew is going to be honored. And he says, for him to do so. It's so great. Do exactly as you have said, but to Mordecai the Jew. Leave nothing out, just as you have mentioned. It's pretty awesome. I just love the horror, the embarrassment, the dread that Haman must be feeling. So verse 11. Take him out. So Haman, boo, he took the robes and the horse, and he dressed Mordecai, yay! And he led him through the square of the city, proclaiming before him, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delights to honor. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't with a lot of enthusiasm. He had to do it, but it's one of those things where you have to do it the whole time. It's just burning in him like, he can't even get the words out. He wants to throw up. He's just, it's awful. It's the worst. Everything has completely flipped. Just a second ago, it was going to be me, and now it's that awful guy, and now he's having to walk around town, not just have it done. He's the one leading him around town. Leading him around the square, a really popular part of town normally. Everyone would have seen it, the whole scene. And he's parading his enemy around, shouting it out. This shall it be done to the man whom the king delights to honor. So we see in the next two verses, verse 12 and 13. Then Mordecai, yay, returned to the king's gate. Can you imagine what it must have been to be Mordecai? It's like, wait, what do you want me to do? Oh, the king says I'm supposed to put this robe on you. It's one he wore before, and it's old. It's just nothing. And then you're supposed to ride on his pretty awesome horse, and I'm supposed to walk you around town. And can you imagine Mordecai going, why? Well, you remember, apparently, you kind of saved his life, and so now he wants to pay you back and say thank you, and so I'm supposed to walk you around town. I mean, those guys knew each other. There's no doubt. He just by visual sight, he knew they knew who each other was. And maybe he thought it was a trick, but he went along with it. So Mordecai, up on this horse, happy trails, everybody. And he's up there just, thank you, everybody. And he's just soaking it in. What an amazing turn that would be, to be sitting up on that horse, walked around the square, and the guy who wanted you and your entire people's dead is proclaiming how the king wants to honor you. What an amazing, just think of how it would have felt for each of these characters. So we see here, as our characters returning to the king's gate, it says, but Haman, boo, hurried to his house. Yeah, no kidding. Mourning and with his head covered. And Haman, boo, told his wife Zeresh and all his friends everything that had happened to him. Haman's like one of those guys. He doesn't really even have a filter. He's just like, you're not going to believe what just happened. I just had to do all this stuff. And he's just like freaking out. And it tells us, then his wise men and his wife Zeresh said to him, if Mordecai, yay, before whom you have begun to fall, is of the Jewish people, you'll not overcome him, but will surely fall before him. So apparently, it appears, they didn't realize, for whatever reason, that Mordecai was Jewish. But now they are saying, if this guy the king wants to honor is of the same people that you are trying to wipe out, you are toast. That's his wife and his friends, the ones that told him to make the gallows. How encouraging that would be. All right. So we see here his response is fear, mourning, embarrassment. It says that he covered his head, certainly in an act of mourning or fear. And the first point we see this morning is this. I call it the gumption of assumption. So he had the gumption to assume, and fortunately, it just adds so much more life to this story. I believe that God writes the story, but I mean, it's amazing how it all comes to play. The king's insomnia reveals Mordecai's unrewarded good deed, and then Haman's ironic assumption backfires in glorious display. It's just one of the coolest things as a kid growing up and hearing the story, of hearing about how all of this kept playing out over chapter after chapter. The way you can apply it this morning is this: be patient for God's purposes. Also, bestow honor. And beware assumption. So we see that all of those things are things we can learn from what God has here for us. Our story isn't over, not even close. So it's not looking good for our villain. Verse 14 is the last verse in this chapter, but it says this: while they were yet talking with him. So this is at Haman's house. Haman's wife Zeresh and friends are telling him, dude, you are toast if that guy was Jewish. You mean Mordecai's Jewish? They're like, this is, and he's just, oh my good. And then, I'll go like this. And it says, while they were yet talking with him, the king's eunuchs arrived and hurried to bring Haman, boo, to the feast that Esther, yay, had prepared. The timing of it just keeps on rolling. It's literally like a movie, because there's not a big pause. There's not 2 or 3 months in between. We're literally talking moments while they're still talking to him. There's a knock at the door, and it's the guy saying, by the way, we're ready to go to dinner? And he's like, oh, can you imagine? He probably had forgotten. There's no way of knowing for sure. He's probably so scared and worried, well, now what? And at home, he's not at the palace. He's at home all worried. Now I got to show up at the palace. I got to act like everything's going to be okay. I got to show up. I got to be there. So anyway, I just think God's perfect timing is just amazing. Haman is probably not been thinking about the feast much, but we get right into chapter 7, verses 1 and 2. And it says, so the king and Haman went to feast with Queen Esther, yay! And on the second day, as they were drinking wine after the feast, so we're already having second meal's over, and they're just kind of hanging out. The king again says to Esther, yay! What is your wish, Queen Esther? Yay! It shall be granted to you. What is your request? He asks both of those, your wish and your request. Even to half of my kingdom it shall be fulfilled. Remember, he kept saying that. It's kind of more of just a grand promise, which probably wasn't that specific, but he's just saying, you can have what you want. And he's asking her, what's your wish? It'll be granted. What is your request? It'll be fulfilled. Thus the title of the message. Verses 3 and 4, it says this: when Queen Esther, yay, answered, she says this. Of course, this beautiful way of communicating. If I have found favor in your sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be granted me for my wish, and my people for my request. For we've been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be killed, to be annihilated. If we'd been sold merely as slaves, men and women, I would have been silent, for our affliction is not to be compared with the loss to the king. So she's setting him up. She doesn't say immediately who it is. She tells him what the problem is. The problem is, I'm doomed. If I am your queen and you have found favor in me, the first wish is for my life, and my request is for my people. She says, we've been sold to be destroyed, to be killed, to be annihilated. It's like a lead balloon at a great event, right? It's like, boom, hits the floor, and he's like, pfft. The room, I'm sure, gets a little tense. Who else is in the room? Haman. And he's going, you know how he kept having all those, oh no, moments? He doesn't know that Queen Esther is Jewish. He knew Mordecai was, but he apparently didn't realize their relationship, that they were cousins. So she leaves that out like a mic drop and just says, this is what's going on. She doesn't tell him who did it yet. She kind of leaves it hanging. So then verses 5 and 6, then King Ahasuerus says to Queen Esther, yay! Who is he? Where is he? Who has dared to do this? And Esther, yay, said, he's a foe. He's an enemy. This wicked Haman, boo. Then Haman, boo. He was terrified before the king and the queen. It's like the moment when it all completely makes sense. She reveals now more than one thing. She just revealed in the sentence before, by the way, my king, I'm Jewish. And you've got a guy that basically set out to kill all of us. He's like, well, who was that? It's this guy right here at our dinner. Your best buddy, your friend. The evil man, the wicked Haman. So, the queen has told the story. This is literally the problem, if you want to call it, in the story. And Haman is terrified before the king. So, we have the second point is the big reveal. Queen Esther reveals her wish is her life, and her request is her people. And she exposes the foe and the enemy to them and to her is wicked Haman. So what a complete change. I mean, if you just look at the two chapters together, and that's why they're together. I couldn't stop at the last chapter. We had to keep going. The application to this would be, ask big when opportunity is set. When the Lord has provided you an opportunity, and it's your time, ask. She says, you've got to save me and save my people. She even had to reveal that she was Jewish, which honestly puts her in jeopardy. Maybe she could have tried to not say anything about it. She could have tried to hide. Her people get destroyed, and she maybe would have lived. Probably not. But she just asked big, save me, save my people. And it's because of that guy. So ask big when the Lord opens an opportunity for you, and that opportunity has been set. You ever experienced the drama of revealing something really big in a room with the people that are there? You ever done that? It is some of the sweetest experience to be able to say, whether it's good or bad, to be able to say, actually the problem is right here in the room. And anyhow, I won't tell it to you today, but I have a story like that. It was kind of fun when I was a senior in high school, but we got too much to go. But if you want to know the story, it's kind of fun. But I had a big reveal, and it was kind of funny. So, have you ever experienced that, where you had a chance to reveal something no one in the place knew, and the people in the room were actually responsible? Verse 7 says, "And the king arose in his wrath from the wine drinking." And it says he went into the palace garden. So we'll see in a second where that is. But Haman, boo! He stayed at the table or in the room there to beg for his life from Queen Esther. Yay! For he saw that harm was determined against him by the king. Yeah, no kidding. The king does a lot worse for a lot less. And so he's going, the queen just identified me as the threat to her and her entire people group. And for good reason, he's completely afraid. It says that the king stepped out into the palace garden. And so we actually have a visual to give us a sense of what we're talking about. Thank you, Julie, for pointing this out to me. We were able to get this put together. But by the way, in the earlier deal, here's the King's Gate. So roughly, this is the city of Susa and the palace area, palace grounds. The square would have been out there. So riding the horse out there in front of all the public people, because the public generally isn't allowed always into the King's Gate. So the public area of the square would have been out here, and that would have been where the horse being led would have been. So here's the King's Gate, and the King's Gate is where we know that our Mordecai would hang out often. He was on the outside in ashes and sackcloth, but he would be allowed to be in the King's Gate, possibly even to enter the King's Gate area without the sackcloth and ashes. But they're in here. Here's the inner court. Here's the throne hall. And this would have been an area where the king would have been. And when Esther would have come before him, she would have stood out here and walked all the way down to where Andy's sitting, right back there. So, no, I'm just kidding. Remember a couple weeks ago, Andy was the king. So that's kind of the setting. Well, while they're meeting, they're having a meal, likely up in this area, and he goes outside to the royal gardens. So you see that? So he steps out. King steps out, and there's a sitting area where they would have been having the meal, or at least reclining and hanging out. And Haman, it says, stays to beg for his life. It says, and the king returned from the next verse, so verse 8. The king returned from the palace garden to the place where they were drinking wine. So he's been out in the garden for a minute, just kind of cooling off, trying to go, well, now what am I going to do? I mean, think about the king. The king's just been told that, in a sense, his right-hand guy, one of his best men, one of his friends, in a sense, has just betrayed his wife, the queen, and now he's got to do something about it. It'll look bad on him, his right-hand guy. Is there something bigger going on? Is there some kind of some mutiny happening amongst his leadership? I mean, all these thoughts are going on in his head, and he's out walking around out in this garden area. But at some point, he goes, I got to go deal with this. So he comes back in. The king returns from the palace garden to the place where they were drinking. And this is crazy. As Haman, boo, was falling on the couch where Esther, yay, was. And the king said, will he even assault the queen in my presence, in my own house? And as the word left the mouth of the king, they covered Haman's face. Boo. So what we see happening here is, it's interesting. It's actually reminiscent of Joseph in a little odd kind of a switch in the Old Testament, Genesis 39, where Joseph was actually falsely accused of trying to take Potiphar's wife, and he tried to flee. And she used his garment as proof like he was doing something wrong, which he wasn't. But it's just an interesting parallel, a lot of parallels between Joseph, Old Testament, way back Genesis, and this story. But anyway, so Haman's falling over this couch, trying to get her attention, probably being really aggressive, and she's just sitting there loving it. She's like, you are toast, buddy. And literally, as the king says, will he even assault the queen in my presence, in my house? So he's got some assistants who are around there, his guards or whatever. They grab Haman, cover his mouth, basically so he can't say anything else. I'm not sure. It wasn't to make him not breathe at that moment, but they covered his face and they ushered him out. So how's it looking for the villain? Not so good. Not so good. We see in this story already how it's being built from chapter 1 all the way through, that the people of Israel had been in this area for quite some time. And there was a particular group, a particular person especially, that had it out for them. And while they've been trying to survive, God provided a way. Way back when, chapter 1, Queen Vashti had been dethroned. Chapter 2, Esther was chosen. And then you start seeing how the relationships are being developed and how this evil guy decides what he wants to do because of Mordecai. So it's looking pretty bleak, but God is active. Verses 9 and 10 says this. While they're grabbing our evil villain, Harbona, one of the eunuchs in attendance on the king, says, moreover, the gallows that Haman, boo, has prepared for Mordecai, yay, whose word saved the king, by the way. Remember, he's the guy that we just discovered saved you. He's standing at Haman's house, boo, 50 cubits high. We call it 75 feet. And the king said, hang him on that. So they hanged Haman, boo, on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai, yay, and the wrath of the king abated. You can set these down for the time being. This guy has been there, or at least aware of the revelation that just a little bit earlier in the day, the king had discovered. Maybe Harbona is the one reading the book of the amazing thing, marvelous deeds. And he's like, hey, king, by the way, this Haman put up a gallows to hang Mordecai, the one you just honored. He's like, hang him on that. He didn't really have a big plan. He goes, well, sounds like something's already good to go. So there's a plan to execute. There's a plan to carry out what needed to be done. And he was hung on the gallows. Again, I mentioned, and study of it showed that there would be two assumptions of what hanging meant. Hanging might have been by the neck and rope, like is more understood by us, but very likely not. In many Persian cultures, it would have been literally to be on a pike, on a stake driven up through the body, and just body hung there while you hang sort of live and then die. 75 feet up in the air for all to see. What an amazing climax to this story of all this tension. And there is going to be more to go. But I want to ask if the worship team would come as we're going to close this morning's message out. The king tells him, well, then take care of that. Point number 3 is this. Haman, the hanged man. Haman aggressively begs Queen Esther for his life, but King Ahasuerus commands that he be hanged on his own gallows that were meant for Mordecai. How do we apply it this morning? Well, we can apply this part. Don't mess with the king's family. God writes poetic justice. I was thinking that phrase in my mind. It's like poetic justice, and then I looked it up, and literally, it's in my different studies. In one of my books, it says, and this was as God wrote poetic justice. I'm like, well, that is so cool. I had thought of that term. That's what they were using. It's just literally, it seems right. Like God put to the right good, the end, the finish of the story with this part. Now, there's still more to go. In fact, Pastor Lori is going to be preaching in 2 weeks, chapter 8, and we get to see kind of the rest of the story. But if you would stand with us this morning, I want to close our message. Even though this is a story, and yeah, we've had a little fun with the wood blocks and the celebrating, this story is such a demonstration of how God cares for us. You know, we need to be patient for God's purposes. I know that I feel this way many times, and I'm sure you do too, that when something is unresolved, or we feel there's a threat against us or someone we love, we need it done now. And it's really to satisfy our own fears and our own concerns. But God knows better, always. So we need to be patient for God's purposes. We don't always understand them, but we got to be patient for God's purposes. We also saw in the first part of this story how when someone has done an honorable thing, it's good to bestow honor on them, but also not to assume too much. When we assume too much, we can really embarrass ourselves. When you're provided opportunity, we need to ask when the setting or the situation has been set before us. And I would say even this morning, we had a time at the altar. I'll let you know, that is an opportunity to ask. That's why we come to the altar. We come to the altar to come before the Lord and just say, God, I don't know what to do about this situation, but I trust you do. So God, hear my cries this morning. We know that God heard the cries of the Israelite people. We know that when Esther was made aware of the threat against her and her people, she called everyone to a 3-day fast because they had to seek God. How do we make it through this? God, what are you going to do? So we need to be prepared for that. And when the opportunity comes, ask. The altar, I think, is that perfect opportunity, by the way. And of course, it's a pretty good idea to not mess with the king's family. You know, in this story, obviously. But God loves his people, and he'll provide. He'll protect. We often have to also pray. And honestly, there are times when prayers have been answered in a poetic way that you can just look back and go, man, God wrote that. That had to be God, the way he perfectly completed this part of this story. This morning, as we are considering, how do we close out? Maybe you came this morning already and prayed, but I want to open up the altars again. Maybe in this story, you're seeing that, Lord, that's what I need. I need to see that you're doing something behind the scenes. Maybe I can't tell, but I need to understand. I want to encourage you, come forward and pray. We want to pray with you as we close the service because it is appropriate that when the opportunity is set that you can ask, and ask big. Lord, heal this person. Lord, fix this situation. Repair this relationship. Would you, Lord? So, as we pray and as the worship team sings, I would encourage you, come forward because we want to pray with you. Step out from where you are.